welcome to Hive Virtual Edition. My name is Lori. Today we're going to take a look at hand knitting. Hand knitting obviously uses your hands to knit without knitting needles. When I started to investigate hand knitting, I found that there's finger knitting, which actually does use your fingers in place of knitting needles. There's also arm knitting, where you actually use your arms as knitting needles. For hand knitting, there are no needles and your hands are not replacing the needles. What you do is make loops and repeatedly pull your yarn through those loops. You need to use a chunky type of wool, such as this one, to do hand knitting. When I was investigating, I found that if you use a thinner wool like this, it's a number 6 thickness, you can have 3 strands of the wool that you treat as one. It was really complicated to do it with the 3 strands, and you'll see through the video what I mean. So I would recommend using a wool of 8 thickness instead. It would go very quickly and be very easy. I do like the final product using the 3 strands of wool together, but it was not quick. Let me show you how it went. I'll be demonstrating my project with the 3 strands, but then I'm also going to show you how to do it with the 1 strand and demonstrate how much quicker and easier the 1 strand of size 8 or larger is. To get started, you can see I'm putting my 3 strands together, treating them like one. You will make a slip knot to begin. Through that loop we've made, you're going to grab the thread and pull it through to make another loop. This chain that we're making will be the first line of your blanket. You have to make the loops large enough that you can get your fingers in there to pull the next piece of yarn through. And remember, I'm using 3 pieces of yarn, but I'm going to refer to it as one. So you can see the chain beginning now. Each loop I make, I put my fingers through it and pull through the yarn to make another loop. You really want to try to keep each of your loops the same size. You'll notice I'm using my left arm to hold the chain down on the surface. In addition, you will have to unravel your wool so that it's not held tightly. If it's held tightly, it will be very difficult to pull your loops through. So here I'm demonstrating how to do this exact same chain, but using the 1 single thicker thread. You'll see how much more quickly it goes when I'm using the single thread. Process is exactly the same. And again, the reason I'm using the triple thread is that I have an abundance of that yarn available to me that I wanted to use. And so, yes, it is more difficult, but I have quite a collection of the navy blue size 6 yarn available. I'm now at the last loop. I've done 34. To begin your first row of stitching, you have to find the hole just before the last loop. You will pull your yarn through that loop and it will form your second loop in the first row. Once again, you'll go to the next hole, pull your yarn through, and leave a loop the same size as your first two loops. You'll continue doing the same thing down the entire line of the chain that you made. You'll notice for me it's a little more difficult because I always have to be sure I've got all three pieces of yarn. You can see that it would be much easier if I just used one thicker piece of yarn. I do like the effect though. And here's the first line using this single thread of yarn. Once again, you can see it goes more quickly. You want to look for the first hole after your last loop and then continue pulling the loops through along the entire line. I'm at the end of my chain and now I have a complete row of loops. You'll notice they're all the same size. And once I get to the end, I flip all the work so that the end is again on the right side. So now I'm going to start with the last loop in the previous row and pull my yarn through. Move to the next loop that I've already got. Pull the yarn through to make another loop. And this is what we're going to continue to do back and forth along this edge. You'll notice that it's a little more difficult because each time I have to make sure I have all three strands of my wool. Therefore, I would suggest doing this project, at least for your first time, use the thicker, bulky wool instead of three strands. So you can see that it's really coming along. I've made some good progress. There is, however, a problem. If you look, you'll see that my loops are much bigger now than they were when I started. And therefore, my blanket is getting wider and wider with each row instead of staying the same width. So what I'm going to do is pull it back several rows to where it really starts to get wider and take it from there, again being more careful this time to keep my loops smaller throughout the row.
Please hang up and try again.
So starting back a few rows, I'm going to take more care to keep my loops all the same size now. Once again, the struggle is mostly related to the 3 strands of wool that I'm using, but I'm going to keep powering through. It is slower work checking for those 3 strands. This is turning out to be more of a long-term project. If you use just the 1 strand, I do believe it would be a 1-day project to complete a blanket. So I'm trying to go through this next loop now, and what I'm noticing is that there are not 3 threads coming through the loop. So I've got to go back and fix this loop so that all 3 threads come through before I can make my next loop. So there's the threads that didn't go through, so I'm going to rethread those so that I have a loop with 3 threads, and now I can continue with this row of knitting. With the 3 strands, you really can't do this project sitting with the project on your lap because you will lose threads. With the 1 strand, I believe it would be quite comfortable to work away at it on your lap. With the 3 strands, I really need to spread out on a flat surface. You'll see on my blanket with 3 strands, I have some lines going across. The reason for this is to prevent the blanket from curling over. I plan to do this at each end of this long blanket. In the middle, it'll all go without these lines. The way to make the lines is, instead of feeding your yarn up from underneath your work into the loop, you take your yarn on top of your project and put it through the loop from the top layer. I do that for about 3 complete lines to get this line effect, and as I said, that will be at the top and bottom of the blanket, and the middle of the blanket will be all the same. This will keep the blanket flat. I'll demonstrate with the single strand. So you can see there's a slight line earlier in my work, and what you'll notice is my yarn is now on top of the project, and I am taking the yarn into the loops from the top. Like I said earlier, I'll do this for 2 or 3 lines and then continue with the regular pulling the yarn from underneath. The navy blanket I'm making is going to take quite a bit of time, so I'm going to demonstrate how to finish your project through casting off using this sample project that I've made. You will take the last 2 loops and feed your yarn through it to make 1 loop. Then you're going to use that loop that you just made with the next loop in line and make one more loop. You're going to continue using the loop you just made together with the next loop in line to make another loop. In this way, you're eliminating one loop with each stitch that you take. So there you can see the nice finished edge on the end of your project. And now I'll cut the thread off and I'll simply weave this thread through the edge of the project so that it's not visible.